Strange as it may seem now, The Big Lebowski wasn't actually especially well received when it first hit screens back in 1998. Many critics actually deemed it disappointing in the wake of the Coens' preceding film, the multi-Oscar-winning Fargo. And its box office takings were, unlike my gold-plated bath and toilet combo, quite modest.
It is our most modestly priced receptacle.
However, as with all great cult movies, The Big Lebowski's reputation grew with time. Nowadays, everyone and their mother can pepper their conversations with at least a few Lebowski quotes or talk of White Russians, and I am personally grateful that bathrobes have finally been accepted as high fashion wear. But it raises the question, how? How is this film, with a plot which Joel Coen described as hopelessly complex and ultimately unimportant, become so enduring? Well, maybe it's not about the events, but the message that it conveys. The conversation between it and the audience that leaves an impression greater than any action set piece ever could have. So let's have a chat. I'm Jules from WhatCulture.com, and these are the life lessons learned from The Big Lebowski.
Hey guys, before you get stuck into this rather meaty list, I just want to talk to you about That Film Theory, which is a brand new channel that we're starting up pretty soon. It's going to take on the form of kind of like relaxed video essays, posing questions, theories, and hopefully finding some answers. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then you can click up here to find some details, or down below to find even more.
Now, to understand the message, we need to look at the mouthpiece. So let's discuss Jeffrey Lebowski, or to use his preferred handle, the Dude.
That or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
While plenty of films and film characters have developed their own cult following, the fandom surrounding The Big Lebowski and its lead protagonist have taken things to another level entirely, not least by inspiring a new religion, the Church of Latter-day Dude, or Dudism, which proposes the Dude's outlook on life to be a modern-day variation of the ancient Chinese teachings of Taoism. As silly as it might seem at first glance, themes of Eastern philosophy can be identified in the film. Jeff Bridges has insisted that the Coen brothers never hinted at any spiritual subtext during the production, but the actor has since explored these ideas in a book entitled The Dude and the Zen Master, in which he and Zen Buddhist teacher Bernie Glassman discuss the parallels between Zen philosophy and the Dude's approach to everyday life.
That some kind of Eastern thing?
Far from it.
So how is the Dude's attitude reflective of a Taoist and/or Zen Buddhist perspective? Well, Taoism and Zen are, in the simplest terms, all about going with the flow. The teachings promote a relaxed, harmonious approach to day-to-day life, living in the here and now rather than dwelling on anxieties from the past or concerns for the future. This is exactly how the Dude lives. As Sam Elliott's The Stranger tells us in his opening narration, the Dude fits right in there, in his time and place, living an easygoing life on a moment-to-moment basis. At least until he finds himself caught up in all of these shambolic goings-on with the Big Lebowski, his multi-millionaire namesake, and those of Bunny and Maud. Now, given that the Dude is quite clearly a burned-out relic of the 60s, it might seem erroneous to describe him as a man of his time and place when he's in Los Angeles in the 1990s. However, what I think it means by this statement is that the Dude would kind of fit in anywhere. He's not a spirit of LA in the early 90s, but instead he's just kind of a social chameleon, blending in with whatever background he's placed against. It's notable that we don't learn anything about the Dude's history until his post-coital conversation with Maud, 88 minutes into the film.
I was one of the authors of the Port Huron Statement.
This is not a man concerned with time or placement. Contrast this with the Dude's unlikely best friend Walter, played by John Goodman. Very early on, we learn that he served in Vietnam, he's divorced, and that he's a practicing Jew. We know all this because Walter makes a point of bringing these subjects up on a regular basis.
You're living in the past.
Walter is obsessed with his past because he defines himself by it. The same is true in a different way of the Big Lebowski, who is so fixated on his many accomplishments that he has his assistant Philip Seymour Hoffman's Brandt usher the Dude through the assorted accolades from his career which hang on the wall of his office, all before the Dude can even get to meet the Lebowski himself. With all this on top of his ostentatious home, his young trophy wife, and his outspoken contempt for the Dude's slovenly manner and lack of gainful employment, the Big Lebowski is clearly anxious to convey the aura of a powerful self-made man, for whom achieving is everything. Of course, the fact that Maud then later reveals that the bulk of his so-called achievements are total fallacies casts a rather different light on the matter, and would appear to confirm the film's underlying suggestion that defining ourselves by what we have achieved in the past is not the way to go. After all, it's readily apparent that the dude hasn't done much with his life, in the eyes of society at least. He's single and childless, with no real career to speak of and no readily apparent goals. Yet none of this seems to be of any concern to him. He just lives a simple, uneventful life and he's perfectly content with that. He, as we mentioned before, just goes with the flow. Yet, that's not to say the dude is always so calm.
Man, come on. I had a rough night and I hate the fucking Eagles, man.
You're being very on, dude.
Doesn't seem particularly Zen behavior, does it? However, Zen is not really about living without emotions, but rather knowing how to disconnect from them. The important thing is that the dude does not dwell on his moments of rage. Instead, he tends to let such moments just wash over him without bearing grudges, even in the face of real indignity. Take the film's opening scene, in which the dude is attacked in his home by Jackie Treehorn's goons, who shove his head into the toilet and piss on his rug, thereby setting in motion the strange misadventures of the following 2 hours. Now, imagine those same guys had instead broken into Walter's house. He probably would have gone full John Wick on them. But the dude, even though he clearly isn't happy about the situation, doesn't really let it get to him. Even when he's close to being drowned, he's quite flippant about it.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
It's down there somewhere. Let me take another look.
This, of course, raises the question of the dude and Walter's friendship. It's another thing that we're not really given any insight into. And at face value, it doesn't seem to make much sense given that, beyond a shared love of bowling, the two men appear to have nothing in common. But this, again, may indicate the Big Lebowski's Taoist overtones. We might easily equate the dude and Walter to yin and yang, total opposites yet inextricably linked, each containing a small piece of the other's attributes, and when put together, they balance each other out perfectly. We might even suggest that the reason the dude spends a good deal of the film in a stressed out mood is because the balance between him and Walter shifts, and the dude allows Walter too great a degree of control. After all, it's Walter who suggests that the dude seek compensation for his rug from the Big Lebowski. This sets off the dude, ever passive and open to suggestion, on a path of uncharacteristic materialism. On top of slyly stealing a rug from the Big Lebowski, he is then lured in by the promise of $20,000 to facilitate the drop-off of the alleged $1 million ransom money. But again, the dude allows Walter to get involved, and sure enough, Walter takes over, greedy for the entire million and turning what should have been a simple handover into a shambles which threatens to turn lethal for the dude. All too late, the dude realizes he should never have escalated the matter in the first place, and he understandably holds Walter at fault for convincing him to do so.
I could be sitting here with just pee stains on my rug.
Yeah.
This shift in the balance between the dude and Walter might explain why Walter often seems the less anxious of the two, and at times he has to talk the dude down from his heights of anxiety. Yet, as Walter's need to take over indicates, his whole approach to life is dictated by the desire for control, hence his over-enthusiastic devotion to the rules. And it's quite clear that the calm exterior he attempts to convey is but a thin veneer for the bottomless well of rage that bubbles underneath.
Am I the only one around here who gives a about the rules?
Still, it's not as if Walter's influence can be held entirely responsible for all of the dude's less than Zen-like tendencies. But again, as with his anger, the dude does not allow his appetites to consume him fully. While he is renowned for his love of White Russians, we only actually see him sip 9 of them over the course of the film's running time. Likewise, we only see him smoke 5 joints, and given that the film is set over the course of several days, it certainly seems like he's got his drug regimen under control. As for his sex drive, we can safely assume that the dude's brief dalliance with Maud is breaking a long period of chastity, willing or otherwise, given that he feels no possessiveness for Maud afterwards and shows no objection to having been used purely for his sperm. It's made clear that while the dude may lust after the ladies, he has no wish to tie himself nor them down. Another thing that the dude does not appear to be tied down to is any specific political ideology. While hints of his old idealism are apparent in his contempt, we also hear him directly quote Republican President George Bush Sr.
You know, this aggression will not stand, man.
Plus, we see that he's got a framed picture of disgraced Richard Nixon in his living room. Does this suggest conservative leanings in the dude? Maybe, but a simpler explanation is that he just liked the sound of that particular Bush line, or similarly just liked that photo of Nixon throwing a bowling ball. Because the dude is not beholden to one specific school of thought, he is far more open to taking in new ideas, even if he doesn't fully comprehend them straight off the bat. We see evidence of this throughout this film, as President Bush is far from the only person who the dude borrows a turn of phrase from.
In the parlance of our times, you know, nothing is f***ed here.
However, just because the dude doesn't adhere to any clear-cut belief system, this doesn't mean that he literally believes in nothing. I mean, he's not a nihilist. The dude's refusal to partake in the things that society expects of him does not indicate a contempt for the world at large, nor does it make him oblivious the way Donnie is. The dude sees, comprehends, and accepts the world around him, but he chooses to stand apart without trying to change anything, himself included. Indeed, beyond the loss of his friend Donnie and the knowledge that he's fathering a child, very little has changed for the dude once the film reaches its conclusion. The whole madcap plot was a mess of threads that led nowhere. Bunny returns home having never been kidnapped, the $1 million was never really in the briefcase, and though the dude and Walter confront the Big Lebowski with their knowledge of the truth, there's no indication that the fake millionaire will be brought to justice for his embezzlement. At the end of it all, the dude doesn't even get his rug back. Yet, in keeping with the Eastern spiritual perspective, the apparent pointlessness of it all is ultimately kind of the point. The Big Lebowski, much like life itself, is all a bit bewildering and can seem insignificant if viewed from the wrong light. But if we adopt a dude-like position, accept it as it is, and just go with the flow, we might just realize that there doesn't need to be a clear-cut rhyme and reason for us to find it satisfying. Given how much turmoil there is in the world today, with ideological differences leaving us more uptight than ever, it's fair to say these times could use a lot more dudes eager to kick back, take it easy, and as the dude's unforgettable last line puts it, abide. And there we have it. It's all very zen, isn't it? Let me know what you thought about this down in the comments section below. And as always, I've been Jules, you've been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon.